it seems to be that you can do anything and you can say anything you want in Canada right now. There's no limits except for TK. There's one thing you cannot say here in Canada. This is the worst thing you could possibly
Let me
say.
guess. Let me guess.
What do you think?
You can't say.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
We're gonna get canceled. All right. All my thoughts were no good. Go ahead. What is
None
it?
of them were good.
None of them were good.
Yeah, you're a wacko.
Yeah.
You are a wacko, TK.
Oh, you can't say wacko. You can't say wacko.
Get out of here!
I think there's just no name calling in the House of Parliament. You know, they just don't want to be like, you know, wacko's a name. You can't be calling people names, judging, basing, like saying something bad about their character. Wacko. Wacko means crazy person.
He's a fucking crazy person. This is so fitting. It's like, I'll bet you if you check in the Webster's dictionary under Justin Trudeau, it says wacko. This might actually be factual.
I don't think so.
Well, there's bigger fish to fry, you bloody
Let's talk about
wacko.
some real estate related things.
You want to talk about real estate?
Yeah.
All right, we can talk about real estate. I wonder what's happening with the real estate in Montreal right now that's getting looted and destroyed from these crazy protesters. Have you seen that in Montreal?
No.
Should we change our backgrounds?
Tell me.
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's much to the story. There seems to be a lot of protesting going on around the world right now. I don't know if you've noticed that, TK.
Yeah, I noticed that McGill University has got some issues there with the protests for the war.
Yeah,
you know, we got people out there protesting. I think people right now, it's not as much. A couple of years ago, those protests, they were serious. People had a lot of money in their bank accounts. People had a lot of things going on. But I really don't think that people have that much more time than they did before in order to protest. So even though right now you might say protests are on the rise, I think they're on the decline.
You think they're on the decline?
I think more and more people are going to be like, I got to get to work, guys. Got to go. Sorry. You know, I think that there'll be much less protests.
But this is the thing, is the people that are protesting, and generally the people that are protesting are kids. No, they're kids. They're students.
Okay. They're university students.
They're students.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's going on. But so you don't think that looting in the streets will lead to any decline in values of retail real estate in Montreal?
No.
All right. So nothing.
Listen, maybe not everything's not a nothing burger.
Everything's a nothing burger around here.
But a lot of the stuff is. It's easy to hype, over sensationalize all these different types of things. But at the end of the day, people at universities love to protest. Those kids,
they do.
They got nothing better
they don't want to go to class.
Real protests, like the trucker convoy,
protest in the quad. You don't have to go to class.
Trucker convoy 2.0, like that wasn't such a big deal. You know, people right now got to get to work. You know, they got to get that money. You know,
they have to be able to afford the grocery bills. Speaking of protests, TK. Well, speaking of protests, are you jumping on the loblaws boycott? Well, loblaws, they own a lot of real estate, and those groceries pay for a lot of real estate. And I mean, you think people could boycott them into bankruptcy?
Absolutely not. And I might even go to Loblaws today.
You are fighting the urge
to go to
Loblaws.
To be able to get groceries.
Are you?
And now wait in line while everybody else is boycotting them.
Are you putting on your Darryl hat and going against the grain? You're gonna walk
in
there.
I'm not going against the grain. I'm
gonna go in with a mask.
Again, trying to boycott Loblaws.
Yeah,
seems like a lot of energy for someone to put into something that's actually going to do nothing, and I don't support those type of things.
All right. Okay.
You know, like I get it. If there's like a real cause here where like we're gonna do something like together that's gonna make sense, and I'm all for it. You know, I'm not gonna litter. I'm not gonna, you know, smoke near babies. I don't know, whatever it is.
What the hell are you talking about?
You know,
all right.
But the bottom line is not going to Loblaws to buy groceries just because we think that they're price gouging us. You know, I'm sorry to tell you, but eventually it's somewhere down the line, Loblaws has got their hands in something that you're buying today.
And something that you're buying somewhere. I mean, have you seen the list? Well, okay. So having said that, then I guess, you know what we really should be protesting, and there are some people protesting this, is all of the people that haven't hit the subscribe button yet. We should be protesting in the streets saying, guys, there's so many of you. It's so easy. And it's
nobody wants
free.
these great Canadian real estate show shirts.
No, not even my wife.
Nobody wants.
She doesn't
Anyways,
want
we got a
them
lot
around.
of them, and we've given out to them. We've given them out to everybody that we know, but we want more people to have them. So by all means, if you're looking for a shirt, reach out. If you're looking to chat with me, if you're looking to chat with me, you can even Calendly me just to be able to get a shirt.
That's right.
Sure, I'm okay with that. But if you want to talk about real estate or anything else, check out the link below. I'm happy to set up a call with you guys. Got a lot of good calls this week from some of you. It was awesome. So I'm looking forward to do it again this following week. So check out the link below. Darryl,
let's go. Clips channel. We got a guest. He's coming on. But what I was really actually getting to is that we should be protesting rent prices, shouldn't we? Shouldn't the students be out there?
Rent prices are dropping.
Rent prices are dropping, he says.
Big time. Yep.
Big time. And well, maybe that's true. Maybe that isn't true. We've got our guest coming on right now.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. I'm double subscribed. Do it yourself. Didn't get to fix the show, though. Didn't get to fix the show.
Ooh-wee.
Mr. Ron Butler, are you excited, TK, to have your cousin on the show?
Cousins, my uncle.
I'm sandwiched. I got a Butler sandwich going on here. TK. But seriously, rents are coming down. That's what they're saying. We've got rents coming down 7% over the last, 6 months?
Yeah.
3 months straight, it's gone down. Mr. Butler, welcome to the show. We're just bitching about everything, basically. How are you?
I'm good. Always remember, in the Butler sandwich, I am always the pitcher.
No problem.
Thank you for that.
Age before beauty.
In case the image wasn't grotesque enough.
Ron,
you.
I've been getting this question asked since, I've been selling real estate for 16 years. And I would say it's probably been close to that amount of time where people have been saying to me, are you related to Ron Butler? And it just keeps happening to me over and over again. And so I keep telling them, the truth every single time. I say, yeah, he's my Uncle Ron. Like, what's the big deal? I'm trying to.
So let's set the record straight. You're absolutely no fucking relation of mine at all. Okay?
Zero.
So I can sense that you must get asked often, are you related to TK Butler?
Never.
It probably happens to you regularly.
Never happened in my life.
Never once.
Not ever. I have 180,000 followers on all platforms, and no one's ever asked it once. So there you go.
Never asked it once.
I'm just preparing you for the future, right? Just that might happen.
Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful.
We're gonna program a bot for you, TK.
It's like Smith over there. Butlers are everywhere. Those guys.
Well, welcome to the show.
They're everywhere in Georgia.
In Georgia.
I heard that. I heard the Kilkenny Castle Butlers are in Chicago, and they're like the main cheese. Those guys are in Chicago, but in Georgia, that's a big part too.
The most butlers in the United States are in Georgia.
In Georgia, yeah, there's a lot of landowners back then. If you get my drift.
Is that some kind of demented racist illusion there? I don't know.
No, that was just they owned a lot of land. So a lot of people ended up with the last name Butler one way or another. I don't know. It just sort of happened.
Are they slinging mortgages?
They're really good athletes though today. They're really good athletes though today, just so you know.
They're slanging something.
That's right. So how are you today? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
I'm good. I'm every day above ground is good.
Every day above ground is good. Do you feel like the days above ground in Canada are getting better or worse in this country from your perspective? Because I mean, I'm out there complaining all the time that from my perspective, when I was younger, I feel like this was a great country. I really do. And I feel like, we were proud of our healthcare. We were proud of our society. We were proud of our melting pot. And I don't feel the same anymore. And when I say that, people tell me I'm an idiot. And I keep trying to explain that my perspective is different because I didn't just land here a few years ago, and I didn't come from somewhere that, they shit in the streets. So from your perspective, like, what do you think about what's going on around here?
Look, it's really, really hard to, well, first of all, we're in an industry that's in a decided down cycle right now. In not every province, but in the two provinces that have half the population of Canada in them, it's in a decided down cycle. So in general, we're not going to be happy campers if we're in an economic down cycle in our own business. It's just, it's it's the kind of recency bias that controls our minds, right? So we're not going to be happy. Is the average Canadian happy? No, because the effects of inflation and difficulties in affordability of everything. No, you're not happy. I mean, you're not happy when you have less money to spend. You're not happy when your rent goes up. You're not happy when your mortgage renewal rate increases. You're not happy when you're feeling squeezed on the money issues in your life. You're just not happy. I mean, nobody's happy about that. So, we went through almost a 12, 13-year period of effectively close to zero interest rates, or interest rates that were the same as inflation, and happy days. And, we had no inflation for, almost 25 years. So lots of positive things. Then we rolled with it and we're pleased. And now things are radically different. So are a lot of people happy? No, I don't really get the vibe that a lot of people, but we're extra unhappy because of the business we're in. So that's something we have to consider.
So you think that a lot of the changes that are today are all just like financially motivated? You think there's anything else that's, changed in Canada? Like, it just seems like there's like every week now we've got a new story about, a new policy coming in, or a new change, or the culture's changing. Is it strictly just people are worried about how much money they've got at the end of the day? Or you think people are just unhappy in general living in Canada? Healthcare concerns, retirement plans,
My observation is, if the economy's booming and everybody's making more money, nobody gives a shit about culture.
Nobody gives a shit. It masks a lot of things.
Yeah. Nobody gives a shit about culture if you're doing well financially. The healthcare is real for those who need it. Healthcare problems are real. They're more real in some provinces than others. Like, they're devastating in some prairie provinces and in Atlantic Canada, and they're not so bad in Ontario, and although a little worse in British Columbia. So there's those things. Yes, you're correct. But
my doctor's 80, and I went to Healthcare Connect about 6 years ago to just put my name on the list. So that way, when it happens, I got a doctor in place, and I get a letter about every 6 months telling me they still haven't found me a doctor.
But your guy's not dead yet, right?
No.
Well, see, that's a positive.
That's a
positive. He's still going.
Yeah.
He's still going. But I mean, I can imagine that that's pretty a big stress factor. So a lot of people are saying they want to leave Canada. I mean, do any of these people really, does it make sense for people to leave Canada, or is the grass always greener on the other side?
When times are shitty, people say they want to leave. When, if and when Trump gets elected in the United States, jillions of people are going to say they're going to leave. They said they were going to leave last time. Not one soul left. Okay, so it's just stuff people say. That's all it is.
Okay. And what do you think Trump's going to do if Trump gets elected? How is that going to affect the Canadian economy and the dollar?
Well, Trump is a version of crazy. So you can't possibly predict what he's going to do. It doesn't make sense to predict what somebody who's really, really odd is going to do. So I can't venture a guess.
So he's a wacko too.
Another wacko out there for sure. Okay, so hold on a sec. So right now, I saw you released a video this morning. You're talking about variable rates again. And I mean, that kind of makes sense. TK's on a variable, right? TK, you're still on a variable, or did you lock in?
I'm riding it.
You're riding that variable.
Sticking with that decision. Yep,
right.
Absolutely.
Yep. So you've gone through a 2-year period of bent over the couch, no lube. So sorry for that. But
I've been there before, and it's never pretty. So
not pretty.
Yeah. And so, Ron, based on that, just the video, I didn't see the video, Darryl. What was Ron's advice in the video? Did you watch the whole thing, or did you just read the title?
Well, Ron's here, so Ron can explain.
Yeah,
it, right?
Ron can explain it.
Let's try that. All right. So it's really
Thanks,
straightforward.
Ron.
I mean,
thanks, Uncle Ron.
We finally know when the cuts are going to come. They're going to come at some point before the end of the year. They will, in all likelihood, go slowly, but once they start, the end is inevitable. The most important thing that happened last week in the mortgage business is that a bank suddenly became aggressive on variable pricing. So for the last 2 years, it's been about prime less a half, prime less 0.75, prime less something in that area. And suddenly we have a bank who's prime less 1.25. And that's, now you could make a case that, well, that's a good discount. That's a discount from 3 or 4 years ago. So if we can grab that discount and we expect the Bank of Canada to drop rates, let's just be conservative and say they drop 1.5%. Well, within a year or 18 months, you're going to have a 4.45 rate, which is not bad in the scheme of things.
You said be conservative that the Bank of Canada drops 1.5 points.
Yeah.
By the end of the year? Is that what you're saying?
No. By the time they're finished the cycle.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
18 months. I said 18 months. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and you figure that this
conservative.
year we're going to see cuts.
yeah, I'll bet you $10,000 we see cuts by the end of this year.
Yes, Ron has
confident.
this bet out there on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, that he's
Every
betting people
platform.
10,000.
Every platform.
Has anyone taken the bet?
$10,000.
Of course not. All
No.
people who comment in social media are cowardly sons of bitches. Okay, so no, not one person has taken the bet.
Ron, they're average Canadians. They're working hard. They're in the comments, doing their duty to inform their brethren.
Average Canadians view the posts. The majority of people, get me wrong, the majority of people who make comments are absolutely fine, but there is a certain decided minority of dumbasses who just make contradictory comments all the time, like basically an unemployed person living in their parents' basement watching, playing video games all day, decides that they're an economist and they're going to say, no, I know the rates are going to go up. The rates are going to go up, Ron. You're stupid. Okay, so that.
We may or may not have said that in our last episode, but I don't know.
Listen, listen, I'm not saying that Ron's stupid at all. I just think that I can make a good case for them needing to, whether they do or not, is another story. I mean, we see that everybody's predictions always, well, not everybody, but most predictions are pretty wrong, especially timing wise. But can you not make a case for the necessity for not cuts in the economy right now? Or do you just see that it's definitely a necessity for cuts?
Let's save time. We'll pick a independent third party. You send 10 grand, I'll send 10 grand. Then we can settle this later. The bet is cuts by the end of Bank of Canada cuts by the end of this year. That's it, period. One cut, two cuts, I don't know, but cuts by the end of the year. So,
which means based on that, so what you're saying is you believe that inflation is going to be under control.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is there will be cuts. What I said is there will be cuts.
Right.
The Bank of Canada will observe the continuous deterioration of the economy, and inflation will not increase rapidly at all. It might just stay where it is. But by their observation of the rapid dysfunction in the economy, they will realize their job is done and it's time to cut. That's it. It's not complicated.
Yeah. Time to cut. And what happens later is anybody's guess, right?
No, once the reduction cycles, if you study, with the exception of Volcker, if you study reduction cycles, it is almost inevitable that cuts continue. That's just like nobody's that smart. I'm not that smart. You just have to look at history. Once in Canada, once the cuts start, they continue. They don't reverse. So now they don't always go as far as you'd want. They don't go 3% down. All of a sudden, we don't end up with a 2% prime rate, but they don't reverse in Canada. There's really, there's a cyclical history that's very, very easy to identify.
Okay. So you're saying that the economy right now, so you're basically firsthand seeing this. I mean, obviously we look at job numbers and stuff like that too, and the economy is showing a little bit more stability than what we're all expecting, but you're actually talking to the people who have the debts, who have the problems. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What's giving you this sort of insider perspective on the economy?
I don't even have to be that smart. I mean, where are you reading about great expansions in workforces? Like who's putting out notices we're planning on hiring another 300 people? You don't see any of that in any major corporation in Canada. You see only two things. We are cutting or we have a hiring freeze. That's it. There's nothing else.
Unless it's the government. The government seems to be hiring pretty crazy.
More jobs coming soon.
That
seems to be more on the macro side with, all the different, companies across Canada and stuff like that. But you specifically with clients, like what type of situations are you now seeing more of? I mean, applications, they're down, right? Mortgage applications
in the two provinces, purchase volume is down, listings are up, and mortgage application volume is down. I mean, every bank in this country reflects on the fact that their mortgage portfolio, their entire book of mortgages, has been shrinking for the last 3 quarters. So that's
hence the extreme discount. Can you say who that lender is who's offering that discount on that variable rate?
TD Bank.
TD Bank. That's a pretty big discount for TD Bank to be offering, and they're competing obviously. So do you think the other banks will follow?
Some have started.
Yeah. All right.
Now, will they match? Not necessarily. No, they will not all match. But I think that it is an intelligent positioning in the mortgage market to say, when the first Bank of Canada cut actually happens, I don't think it's June, might be July. It will eventually be sometime in the fall, if not July. That it's an intelligent marketing approach to say, when that happens, the interest in variable will spike, because even when it was just a rumor in February and March, or January and February, just a rumor of cuts, variable sales volume quadrupled in some provinces.
Wow.
So the rate, so just so I understand, and people who are listening understand, the fact that they're offering this discount is strictly just to get more business. This doesn't tilt the hand that TD Bank thinks rates are going to be dropping, or is it on both sides? They think rates are coming down, so they're going to start to offer a discount, and then they also want to build up their mortgage book. How do you read that? The fact that they're offering such a big discount on the variable rate?
2 things: that they have a rational and correct expectation of lower prime rates in Canada sometime this year, and that they feel it is a good marketing strategy to be the rate leader when the public's perception of variable changes, which is, again, either late summer or fall, or even today. Some, if as we get closer to June, we'll hear more chatter about a cut, and interest in variable will improve somewhat.
So you made it clear before when we were asking you that you did not say that they would have inflation under control. Cutting into that environment, doesn't it, on top of all the spending policies that the government's kind of throwing into the mix every week, it seems, doesn't inflation keep going?
You know what is the Bank of Canada's inflation target?
2%.
No, it's between
2 to 3.
2 and 3.
Okay, yeah.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
What have the last 2 inflation reports been?
3.1 was the last one. 3.9.
Under 3. Under 3. Okay, so it is what it is. The thing about me is I'm old, so I've seen everything. People rant and rave if we cut the Canadian dollar, go to rat shit, be the end of the world. I spent years at a 63-cent dollar. Years. Okay. The world didn't end. In fact, exports surged out of Canada.
And Hollywood North, there was like a lot of action here. It seemed like a boom town, didn't it?
That too. Yeah, that too.
So
this stuff doesn't terrify me. The Tiff Macklin just this week described the fact that there could be divergence between the 2 countries in terms of prime rate, but it could not be extreme divergence. So the idea that there could be 2 cuts before the Fed starts to cut in the US is just an outgrowth of what he said as recently as a few days ago.
So basically, like the 2 things right now that I think a lot of people are talking about the most is, one is, the Fed down in the States signaling that they're not going to be lowering rates as fast as they thought they would, because inflation still seems to be a little bit more elevated there. In Canada, obviously, our inflation might be under control, so they might be talking about lowering the rates a little bit earlier, which would create the devaluation of our Canadian dollar. And then also, if Trump wins, tariffs and all that kind of stuff could lead to further devaluation of the dollar. But you're saying that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not something that we should be too concerned about.
I lived through a 63-cent dollar for multiple years. Am I saying that it's an ideal thing? No, it's not. You got to, almost every Caribbean country, Mexico, United States, almost every place that you wanted to vacation that exists, it was ridiculously expensive, and a lot of people stayed home. So it's not and it's certainly, there is elevation in certain prices of goods coming into the country, particularly for some food products. But by the same token, as interest rates fall, the very high component that we see in our inflation of rents and mortgage payments starts to level off and is no longer as inflationary. So there's two factors there. But what's really important to understand is another thing happened in the United States, as Jerome Powell was talking about, keeping rates higher for longer. In the same date, he also declared the end of quantitative tightening in the United States.
The end of the tightening.
Quantitative tightening. Okay, so they are no longer taking bonds. They're in most cases, a central bank just rolls over their bonds when they come, at the end of the term. If you sell a 5-year, 10-year bond, there's bonds coming off every single week, based on those dates. And in Canada, we ended quantitative tightening in Canada over, I think, 8 weeks ago. But he also announced the end of quantitative tightening in the United States, and immediately their bond market fell 5%. Their bond yields fell 5%.
Wow.
So what do you see happening? So if we do cut at some point, or when we cut at some point, what happens to the real estate market? Do people get crazy and start rushing in again? We're still seeing lineups at some of these new pre-construction subdivisions, which is nuts. But what happens when they make a cut?
Okay, so it can only be helpful. Obviously rate cuts are a good thing for real estate, not a bad thing in a general way. Sometimes it's important to understand why there's lineups at subdivisions. What do you think the state is of new construction of low-rise inventory in Ontario or British Columbia today? What do you think the state of this is houses to buy, low-rise, semis, detached, townhouses? What do you think is the level of new construction right now?
Abysmal.
Lower than what it should be.
It's horrible.
The right word was abysmal.
Yeah.
It is so low, it's ridiculous. So if you make something ridiculously scarce and somebody opens, a sales office in Windsor to sell 60 units of detached, people are driving from Toronto to buy those detached because it is phenomenally scarce product.
And it's a product people want to actually live in, right? Like these are buyers that are looking for a place. They're not necessarily investors right now. People need a roof.
There's too many investors, but at the end of the day, the scarcity, like extreme scarcity, like you look at graphs, and right now of all types of new construction, you sort of have to segregate new construction to buy from purpose-built rentals. But if you look at it, it's like detached is like, it's so low in British Columbia and Ontario that it's just almost can't find it.
It doesn't make sense in the other provinces because of the final sale price, right? With the cost of construction and building the materials and everything else like that. Like, try to build a detached subdivision in New Brunswick and sell everything for $420,000 afterwards, right?
Well, their land cost is still ridiculously lower in New Brunswick. Okay, if you're selling for $420,000. If you're selling for $420,000 in New Brunswick, you're making about $100,000 a unit. Because what land price still is the largest component in British Columbia and Ontario, because the land prices in these provinces in urban or suburban areas are ridiculously elevated. So
okay, and so you have that going on with coupled with so less cranes in the air, a lot of completions because we had a ton of construction over the last little while. New applications down like crazy. And not only that, Jeremiah Shamus put up a tweet yesterday or the day before that development and land sales, which I know perfectly well, especially for high density sites, are at a 10-year low. So there's like glut after glut coming down the pipe. You mix this with cuts, like how do prices not just run away again? And counterbalance that the effect of the cuts with the shelter costs.
Okay, so what is the most plentiful inventory in those two provinces in British Columbia and Ontario?
Condos, tiny condos.
Sure. So who is the purchaser of a dog crate condo?
Investors.
are, is an investor encouraged? Like, if we look at the cycle of investors buying condos, we understand that condos don't complete for between 5 and 6 years. So if we understand the psychology of it, investors were buying these tiny condos at consistently increasing square footage costs, like bizarre levels of increase. But because historically over the previous 12 or 13 years, there had been effectively a zero interest rate environment, that no matter how ridiculously more expensive each new phase was, it mainly got sold by assignment for 12 years. Okay, so there was no issues there. I mean, you could just make 80 grand and not keep it. Like, stuff was so simple, it was ridiculous, which has completely ended. It's like the sale of, like, tulips in Holland in the 1600s. Okay,
but has everybody learned their lesson, you think?
Hell yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope so.
People who throw money at investment condos, they do a little bit of research first. Okay.
Little bit.
They do a little bit of study. They do a tiny bit of investigation.
Twitter.
And they find out that, you know what? No, it's not going to work at all. It's not even going to be worth what you paid for it. For next year, right now we're in an environment where there's being blanket appraisals done of buildings at purchase price. In other words, the bank who is behind the financing of the building itself, who's got the construction financing, the development financing, is arranging for a blanket appraisal at the purchase price.
Wow.
So
crazy.
they can close on the condo. Okay. If they didn't, like and eventually it'll run out of steam because it'll just get too ridiculous. But right now you're getting the bank who's behind the construction. It becomes known that, well, if you go get a mortgage from that bank, they're going to appraise this condo at the purchase price. And if you get it from another bank, they're going to appraise it at 15% less than the purchase price. So you better use that bank that's given the blanket appraisal, which they do. So, but that can only go on so long. And I always remember the 2025 vintage of completed condos are at an even higher price per square foot than the difficulties we're having with the 2024 vintage. And don't even talk about 2026. Holy shit. That's just
wait till that day comes. Yeah.
So, and those problems aren't going away, period. They aren't. And no investor is going to buy a dog crate condo today. I mean, in Toronto, they just they opened and shut 60 sales offices in the last year.
Yeah.
Just opened them. Nothing happened. Close them. We're done.
How do we get that back on track? How do we get more places built, which we know only investors are going to be the ones who are going to buy them, because we need people who are stupid enough to be able to put their money up in order to get these things financed. How do we get out of this? What's the solution for us to get back to building condos and houses?
Well, hold on a sec. Before you answer that, let me just throw this into the mix, because I think you touched on it, and I think it's really important. And I have a note actually to discuss it today, which is great. So there's a fundamental flaw in the system, the financing system of these condos, right? Like, people that need to move into them, the timing is so far off. The timing to build them is so far off. But the way it's designed is that we need, the developers have to get to 65, 70% pre-solds from people that definitely can't wait that long to move in. Maybe if the timing is even right? Like, they promise you 5, you move in 6.5. Like, there's this fundamental issue, and there's so much new stuff coming down the pipe on top of that for this old system, this old way of micro condos to investors. Like, just for example, there's 30,000 units in planning in the Golden Mile right now. And I guarantee you, these are like 350, 450 square foot, you call them dog crates, right? And these are going to have to be part of that system that is currently in place that needs 65, 70% purchases, sales in order to move forward. And you're stacking that on top of 60 in the last year that just said, you know what, like, maybe we should wait a little bit. And then couple it on top of the fact that all the sales are down, and anybody that already has land, because of all these new planning things, is going back in for redevelopment. Like, TK, I just want to throw that into TK's question, because it's like, how are we going to get the hell out of this mess when there's so much already in this fucked up system?
Well, it's disruptive. I mean, some of those developers are going to go bankrupt. Smaller ones, the newer ones are going to go bankrupt. And then the land will resell at a lower price eventually. And some of it will be converted to purpose-built rentals. They won't be condos. They will be purpose-built rentals, because that program through CMHC is aggressive, well-priced, and works, frankly works. I mean, there's a number of condominium projects in Toronto, all through GTA, have been converted to purpose-built rental already. So that's already happened. But yeah, the one way to adjust for incorrect land pricing is to go broke and to the land to be repurchased at a lower price. And whoever bought it lost all their equity, and maybe the lender got touched up too.
Even some of the deals, though, Darryl and I have looked at, there's even deals like in certain areas where even if the land was free, it still doesn't pencil, just because of all the taxes, construction cost, financing cost, all that kind of stuff. Like, what other solutions are there, just other than the land price coming down?
Well, the conversion to purpose-built rentals changes a lot of things. It changes the taxation of the building. It changes the development fees in the building. It changes an awful lot. So it's possible that stuff that you look at that absolutely wouldn't pencil if the land was free would pencil based on the implicit changes that happen if you build a purpose-built rental.
Yeah, everybody that I talk to now, every developer, everybody like everybody's talking purpose-built rental now. Everybody is looking at purpose-built rental. It's a very different animal, and it requires a hell of a lot more equity to get off the ground. But I think like there's got to be some hybrid.
No, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. If you qualify for the CMHC's program, they'll provide 93% of the of construction financing.
93% of construction financing.
Right. Well, there's a lot that has to happen that would work. You have to have they have engineers who consult to approve your cost structures on the builds. There has to be margins of safety built in. There's a separate engineering group that monitors the build. You have to have a takeout arranged by a REIT or a pension plan. It has to be a signed contract. In other words, it has to be a seamless flow through that CMHC knows this is going to work, and it does pencil and it makes sense. So it's just not a free-for-all.
No,
it's
not easy.
It's complicated and it's carefully done. But that said, if you've got a REIT or a pension plan to take you out, and you can get to your cost per square foot correctly. I mean, we understand what the rents will be, so it's just formulaic. It just takes care of itself.
Yeah,
I think the solution then is to change the model we have right now, which is instead of the investors, mom and pops getting in with their line of credits and screwing everything up, have these big REITs take over so that the purpose-built rentals are being built by professionals. It's done right, and then we won't have as many condos anymore, but we'll have places for people to live.
Well, that's the only thing that is being built right now. Any fresh start of purpose-built rentals has gone through this process. It's all CMHC program. All of it is. That's why CMHC pumped up its annual lending capacity by $30 billion on this for just this. Okay. Yeah. And it works. And private capital can get involved, because once CMHC is in a position to guarantee it, private capital is happy to step in. You know, yes, we are going to see a substantial change to purpose-built rentals moving in the development of rental stock is going to be purpose-built rentals moving forward. It may eventually cycle back to investors, but it might cycle back in a different way. And like, for instance, in the United States, again, because they have ridiculously lower land costs and enormously, crazily lower development costs and taxation on new builds and development fees and every other stupid thing that the municipalities in the province do. Like 30 people get together, open a company, and build 120 townhomes because the costs are so much less. But what we will also probably see eventually is a provincially mandated radical change in how municipalities approach development fees, development charges. We may see in the coming years the province just coming out and saying, listen, we're going to have to have independent accountants decide what it really fucking costs to build this new, what your cost side of this real development is, because we think that the truth is 65 or 70% of the money you're charging in development fees and other bullshit charges like a park in another whole different part of the city, because there's no park inside of a condo tower. So, you know, we're going to make sure that you're not layering on general revenue, like of all this huge taxation and development costs, that we think you're layering on massive amounts of general revenue returns so you can artificially keep property taxes low. And we're going to force you to stop, because provinces control municipalities. That's how it works. They can call the shots. So if it ever gets to that point that they say, no, we're not going to live with this anymore, you're going to have to show us what it actually costs to hook up water, sewer, whatever is a legitimate cost to build a condo tower. And that's it. That's all we're going to allow you. You can't just pad your books with, you know, money that you're pouring into general revenues and underwriting your property tax cost. That could happen. That absolutely could happen.
It's always puzzling when you see that parking lot collecting, you know, or contributing $25,000 a year to property taxes. All of a sudden 400 units goes up, and all of a sudden they've got $1 million of revenue coming in. And yet they still have all these development charges, you know, and that's like recurring, right? That's like every year you're going to get $1 million. You're getting 975 grand more a year from collecting taxes. Yeah, there's costs, there's services, education, all these type of things. Like, it makes sense. But at the end of the day, where's that money going, right? And those are the things that people have always been, you know, questioning and stuff. I want to talk. You mentioned about changes they made. So CMHC is contributing more to their purpose-built housing fund. They've got some other stuff like connecting CRA to mortgage applications. You're in the mortgage business. There's a lot of fraudulent applications out there. How would this work? Do you think it's a good idea? What do you know about it?
I'm a pioneer of it. I testified before parliamentary committees about it. Okay.
It's my Uncle Ron, I know.
No, we have no relationship. The reality is the government made a commitment to it in their last budget as part of the housing programming, that they would start the consultation to link CRA with major lenders in Canada, so that there would be a kind of a checking system, not your whole income, just one single box on the tax return, one line 15,000. You've signed a waiver, you've signed a privacy waiver, and you've handed over your tax documents to the bank, and the bank simply pings one single line, one single box off of CRA. So here's the number. Is it accurate? Red light, green light. That's it. True, false. That's it. There's no invasion of privacy. Nobody's studying your deductions and whether you paid child support or anything like that. Doesn't happen. One single number. That's it. And that should eliminate 80% of all mortgage document fraud.
How many approvals will that eliminate?
Well, mortgage document fraud is not, it's problematic. It's troublesome. It's all wrong. It's unfair to people who get turned down every day because they're giving honest documents. But it's not what people think it is. It's not even, I don't even think it's 10% of all mortgages. I'd be surprised if it was more than 5%. Mortgage fraud is extremely regional. It's very, very regional. Like if you look at Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all the maritime provinces, it's probably less than 1%. It's probably less than 0.5%. So it's a very regional thing. Yeah, but it'll eliminate it if that process is finally pushed through. It'll be the end of 80% of it.
So this would be mandatory for banks? This would be like, that's a requirement for all lenders to have that done?
Yes, all lenders would do it, yes.
So simple, so easy. So is it actually going to happen?
Well, it probably won't happen, but when the new government gets in Ottawa, it will happen, because they're at all levels, that a new conservative government is committed to it.
So and then sorry, I didn't get to finish that last little discussion there. I wanted to know, based on all that, everything switching to rental replacement, is there going to be anything for people to buy that want to buy? And like, are prices for purchasing just going to go bananas here?
Well, that's sort of the answer to your question about once rates come down and will purchases surge, they will move, and they won't be rock bottom like we have today. But you just defined the problem. We don't build anything. I mean, like, seriously, like we're building no low rise at all in Ontario right now. We're building some in Innisfil and Windsor and the farthest reaches of North Oshawa or Lindsay. We're building some in Lindsay, but we're not building any, we're not building any in GTA at all. Okay. So no low rise. And now we're going to see that high rise is going to be dramatically stunted. So it wouldn't surprise me if by the end of 2024, we find that this is one of the lowest. And particularly if you took the time to remove purpose-built rentals, if you remove purpose-built rentals from 2024 new housing starts, it wouldn't surprise me if it was the lowest year in 15 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, how much higher is the population in those 15 years?
But this is the time with the government saying more houses faster, gonna build more. And so how ironic is that?
Well, the government, when the government kept talking about building houses, all levels of government talked about building houses and all of the money they poured into it. The one thing they were completely absent of saying is, by the way, all of these new houses that we're going to build are only going to be rentals.
Right.
They missed that. They missed that part. Yeah.
I picture subdivisions full of fourplexes with laneway suites or garden suites being built by these builders, like full in the Greenbelt. Right. But full subdivisions of like, I guess, purpose-built purpose-built rentals or generational homes or whatever you want to call them. But I guess
purpose-built rentals today are still almost exclusively high-rise towers, still to this day. So
sure.
That won't change. The ones that are going up right now are towers. There's not even there's no purpose-built rental townhome projects. It doesn't exist.
No. Kind of interesting.
Not any new ones that are coming up online. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So right now, obviously, we've got some changes in the market. What about the resale market? Right now I'd say right now the prices are starting to fall a little bit in condos. We're starting to see the detached market get saturated with listings. We're starting to see that a little bit more. How do you see this year, 2024, playing out? Last year around this time was kind of like the peak, and then it went down every single month until December, and it ended lower in December than it did in January. This year, we've kind of been on that trajectory. Do you think it's going to be the same as last year?
Yeah, it's a slightly different trajectory. The good months were January, Feb, and March, and it's just fallen off a cliff since then in the two big provinces, particularly Ontario. It'll be a slow summer, but as soon as the first cut happens, there will be there'll be restoration of activity. But yeah, until that happens, it's not going to be good. Not at all.
I have some questions. These are all going back in the past now. So first one was the mortgage deferral cliff or crisis. Can't remember what they called it. At that time,
it was a cliff.
Deferral cliff. Okay, it was a cliff. That one was a cliff, right? Picturing the bluffs. What did you think at that time? Did you think that was going to be a big deal? Or was that all hype?
Well, the first, at the first blush of it, when interest rates had gone up faster than they've ever gone up in the history of Canada, and more steeply than they've ever gone up in the history of Canada, it was worth thinking about. That it was, that could be dangerous. And then almost within a few months, we discovered it's not, because we had the perfect example. We had Scotiabank, who's got jillions of mortgages, who raised its every time prime went up, Scotia raised the payment. So people went from 1.45 to 6.2, and the payments went up along with it. And what happened was, if you look at Scotiabank's 90-day default rate, which is the standard that they use in the banking system, Scotia's was the same as everybody else's. There was no deviation. It's only 18 basis points, 18 bips. Okay, which is one of the lowest default rates in the entire world. It's ridiculous.
Canadians are resilient to pay their mortgage. Yeah.
Well, it was just a useful exercise. It was research. It told you what this deferral cliff was all about, that it would constrain the economy as people couldn't spend money on other things, but they'd either sell the property or change their lifestyle or radically reduce their spending, or they would find ways to do it. They would take on people in the basement. They would, whatever was needed. But this is pure evidence, right? We've been at this at apex rate for well over a year now, and the default rate went from 15 bips, which is the lowest in the world, to 18 bips, which is still the lowest in the world for Scotiabank and all those customers. And by the way, some of those customers locked in, and took a fix that was slightly less, but still a lot. And so we have the evidence. The evidence is the cliff is just barely a hill.
So the trigger rate crisis, deferral cliff, those were all sort of overblown, great media over centralization.
Well, sure, but they do have a decided effect. I mean, they have a real effect on the economy. This is why Canada's economy is deteriorating so much faster than the U.S. economy. U.S. has 30-year rates. People have got 2.89. They got another 25 years to go at 2.89. They don't have to think too hard. Okay.
No.
But that is a great, it is an illustration of why our economy is going to be under so much more pressure than theirs.
So we saw that they kind of
the last question, Darryl, sorry, just is now the new renewal crisis. This is now, $350 billion worth of mortgages being renewed next year and all that kind of stuff. So you feel it'll have less of an impact on people being maybe forced to sell or power sales, but a greater effect on the economy.
Exactly. And that is why, and Tiff Macklin knows this. He knows this. This is a known thing. This is, they have 400 people with economics degrees at the Bank of Canada. They study the shit out of this stuff. They get information before we get information. They know they have a pipeline directly to the big banks who can tell them on a daily basis whether credit card defaults increasing, whether HELOC defaults increasing. What they have the best pipeline of information you could imagine. Now, I don't necessarily think they use it with perfect efficiency, but they have the insight. So they know that this is not necessarily a end of the world scenario, but it sure as shit is a highly deteriorating economy scenario, like worse and worse and worse. So yes, that's why it's another reason why rate cuts have to come. The main reason why rate cuts have to come in Canada before the US.
To brace for that, the renewal crisis.
To brace for, but it's not, but it's so gradual, it's not really a crisis. Let's face it, if in 2026, if the rates aren't 5.5%, if they're 4.25%, it will be not great, but
not much of a crisis.
It won't be the end of of our existence. So and that's what the Bank of Canada knows. They know that the biggest year for renewals is 2026, and the bank feels quite strongly that rates will be down by 25 or 35% by that time.
Well, TK, I'll tell you, I feel a lot better now. I feel like everything's gonna be okay around here.
No shit, no, nothing's going to be okay. I mean, we're not building any low-rise homes.
Yeah.
We're going to have a kind of a lurching catastrophe in condo completions in 25 and 26. And it's going to be shit, honestly.
Shit.
But just that particular thing, this Armageddon of renewal rates, it's just going to be bad. It's not going to be a catastrophe.
Just going to be bad.
Just to give some advice, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are already following you on social media and stuff, but give advice now. There's people out there who are struggling. Maybe they're not making their payments. They're thinking about getting into the market. Maybe they're
waiting for cuts,
investment properties and stuff like that. What kind of advice right now, overall in general about the market are you giving to people that you think people listening right now could benefit from? If
you're highly leveraged, you have multiple properties, sell some of them. I mean, you probably bought them years ago. You're not going to lose. You're not going to have negative equity. You're probably going to escape with some money, and you probably have negative cash flow on some of them right now. So sell them. I mean, just do your best. Well, if we sell them, it's going to crash the market some more. Dude, you're in negative cash flow, and there's no hope of a value increase. So give that some thought. Okay. And what you should say to young people is, look, you were dealt a very bad hand, the shit hand, the worst hand in the world. You had a central bank and a finance ministry in Ottawa that believed in zero interest rates were a great idea and could last forever, and they robbed your future. So you've got reason to be mad. Vote for somebody who talks about the reason you should be mad. Don't be apathetic. Get off your ass and vote. Votes for somebody who says, yeah, I'm going to tear this whole demented structure down. Okay. So, you can say those things, but look, this thing isn't going to get better overnight. It's just not. It's not even slightly going to get better overnight. So, people have got to understand, manage themselves accordingly, make tough decisions. And by the way, if you're not making payments, don't do that. Okay. If you think you can't make a payment, call your bank before you can't make a payment.
Yeah.
The bank has many tools to try to help you. So just
make an arrangement first.
Before you miss the payment, call the bank and say, this is my situation. What can you offer me?
Single most important thing to do if you're reaching that crisis moment is don't be afraid to talk to the lender. Majority of people think, oh my God, I don't want to talk to them. Then they'll know I'm in trouble. Dude, they're going to know you're in trouble when you miss the payment. Okay. Like, sweet Jesus, like just call now. I mean, they've got whole programs and help desks and people who are trained to try to deal with this stuff. So
have you seen them defer payments recently? Have you heard clients tell you that they're deferring their payments, saying, hey, don't worry about this month or anything like that?
If you've got an underwater rental, that probably won't work. Okay. But if it's your owner occupied home and it might be a, CMHC insured, or, it might be able to, you might be able to re-amortize it. You might be at 22-year amortization and they can run you back up to 30 years, reduce your payment. If you don't call, you'll never know. You absolutely will never know. You've got to call and you've got to insist on talking to the expert at remedy of my problem that I can't make my payments. I need to talk to the expert. If you're just the person in the call center who normally deals with, can I raise my credit limit on my credit card? That's the wrong person. You have to penetrate to the right person, and they will know what they can do to help you in a realistic way.
And people can call, people at Butler Mortgages too.
Only if they want to buy something. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I kid.
We offer the same advice to everybody. We know the things you hear out of my mouth are the same thing we tell everybody. Reach out, be proactive. We can see you're at 22-year amortization, immediately ask for 30. There's some privacy reasons we can't do everything for the customer. But yeah, we know what to tell them. We tell it to them consistently.
I got one last question, and actually it could be for both of you. 2 quick minutes. We keep talking about on this show the fact that even if we could get all these new great planning things in order and get all these new applications in, we still are so short on labor in order to be able to actually really make much of a difference. It'd be hard to have enough labor right now to even do what we've been doing consistently lately. But what they've announced recently, I don't know if you've heard this, both of you, is in a new high school program where grade 11s and 12s will be able to spend 80% of the year as apprentices in the trades. And now, although it sounds kind of slave labor-ish, it kind of sounds like a solution too. What do you think? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, have. I mean, everything helps. Every single thing helps, but also, and we should rationally be targeting. Provinces are not allowed to target construction trades people in their immigration profile. Provinces are only allowed to select on an employment side 10% of the occupations they want to bring in. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. Believe it or not, the federal government says, no, you're not allowed to pick who you need. Yeah, no, 10%, that's your limit. Okay, but a lot of people don't know the details of the fuckery of the immigration program. Okay, but look, let's just think about one thing for a second. This is important. So how badly will we be short of labor if we've shelved 60 projects and we shelve another 60 this year and another 100? I mean, sometimes labor problems just solve themselves with patience. But don't get me wrong. There's a generational problem. The good quality tradespeople are too old. They're like old as hell. So we got to bring
the young people don't want to be in high school swinging a hammer,
carrying bricks up a scaffold. For fuck's sake,
the solution is a bridge.
Some robots
from Mexico to Canada, just a bridge that goes over the states, and they can
look. If you have the right immigrants come here, they're happy to work.
Yeah,
very, very happy to work. Yes, happy to work. Just train them, they'll work. Okay. When you come from a place where poverty is real on a daily basis, if you give those people a chance to work, they will work. Don't worry about it. You just got to train them. That's all.
So 16, 17-year-old high school students, not
born and raised here, might not be willing to do it. Ron, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you
Ron
so
Butler,
much.
no relation to TK Butler at
So
all.
not related.
There's
so
nothing.
not related.
I'll
Never
see you at Christmas,
heard of
Uncle Ron,
TK
but
before.
there is no relation whatsoever.
No,
Good.
never.
Good. We appreciate you coming on the show, and
Thank
hope
you
you
for
can join
coming.
us again in the future too.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Take care now.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ron.